This is the Average Guy Network, and you have found Home Gadget Geeks, show number 421, recorded on October 31st, 2019. Here on Home Gadget Geeks, we cover all the favorite tech gadgets that find their way into your home. News, reviews, product updates, and conversation, all for the average tech guy. I'm your host, Jim Collison, broadcasting live from the Average Guy.TV studios here in at least a brisk Bellevue, Nebraska. We've avoided the kids tonight. Mike, do you have many kids come by for Halloween there?
Not a ton, maybe a dozen, 2 dozen at the most.
Okay, Halloween night. Mike Wieger is out with his children trick-or-treating tonight, and always a fun tradition. I would sometimes do that with my kids. They're long gone, Mike. Yours are too, so yep. We kind of just get to sit back. But we know Mike out with his younger kids. Of course, we post the show. Not a lot of show notes tonight, but I don't know if you're maybe a new listener. We've been doing 100% transcripts now, so if you want to go out and take a look at those in the show notes, theaverageguy.tv/ and then HGG421 for this as well. Don't forget, you can join us on our mobile apps. Some of you are out. It's really the easiest way to stream it on the road. It's just a single app, Android, iPhone. It'll stream it from just about anywhere as long as you have some kind of connection. You can get that homegadgetgeeks.com, Android, iPhone, the big buttons right there. You can just download it. It's absolutely free. We thank our Patreon subscribers for that as well. If you want to join in the conversation, you can join our Discord group, theaverageguy.tv/Discord, and our Facebook group, theaverageguy.tv/Facebook. Super easy to get in those groups as well. We want to thank Yas last week, who came on from Nextcloud and did a bang-up job. We'll have him back on. He was a good tech guy. And Mike, if you get a chance to go listen to that, I know you don't always do, but you joined us a long time ago. We were talking about that. You would not stop or get off. In fact, well, let me finish the sentence. You're an Unraid guy, and so you brought a lot of that into our community. You're also a Nextcloud guy. We did a home tech tips video on YouTube, you and me, of that. Yeah. MediaSonic box. Yep, still my number one video.
I'm still using those guys. They're hooked up to my Unraid server. They're still running.
Yeah. Well, it's good. I almost bought one. I did buy the MediaSonic 4-bay external, right? So you can just put the drives in.
Right.
And I'm using that for crypto on Burst and all those other ones that we do. Those drives get so hot in that external bay.
Yeah, so I don't know how much you're hitting them.
A lot.
So that could be part of it. I removed the front cover to help with the flow a little bit, the airflow a little bit, but I don't hit mine really hard. Mine are connected for, I back up the podcast files to those because my podcast files are insane. I got like
4-bay, right? It's 4-bay. And what drives do you have in there?
So in one of them, I have a 4 terabyte drives, and the other two, I have 2 terabyte drives. So was that a 12 terabyte one, and then
2468. So 20 terabytes total.
Yeah. And I'm using that to back up my podcast files because I have like 13 terabyte of podcast files. You know, what the heck, Mike? But I record in a pretty high bit rate for video, and I actually double record the video. And then I keep the originals, and plus I keep the edits. And so it adds up fast, but I don't want to back that stuff up to the cloud. So
no, you don't. It's too much.
Yeah, it's too much.
It's just too. If you ever had to get it down, it'd take you. Take you a week.
Now it's not the best backup plan because I'm backing it up to the same server but different disk. But I figure, look, if the place burns down, I lose those podcast files. I do have the edits that are up, loaded up there. So, I feel that's good enough. For everything else, I do back up to the cloud. But for those podcast files, I figure they're on the Unraid server, they're on the MediaSonic boxes. That's good enough for what I want.
And do you, that's all on Unraid?
Yeah.
4, 8, 12, 16 plus 2, 4, 6, 8, 16 plus 8, so 24. I think I said 20. And Ken is correcting me in the chat room. So all of that is on Unraid.
It's on Unraid as, you can attach them as unassigned drives. So they're attached as unassigned drives. My actual Unraid server has 70 terabyte of storage, which I think as of today was 54% used. So I've been able to get that down some.
Yeah. Well, and Yas last week was pretty, like, as I was just talking about some of the sample sizes of the drives that I've heard, or the storage sizes that I've heard, even he was like, Oh my gosh, you guys are crazy. I was like, yeah, I have 96 terabytes here. I know you're close to 100
Yeah.
probably,
So,
right? And
yeah, with those two
yeah,
combined, yeah.
yeah. And there's many more who have,
Even more.
and yeah, and he, and in that world, even in Nextcloud world, I'm sure their customers, especially when they're thinking about their consumer customers like us, were probably 10 terabytes or less in most cases, right? But he was pretty surprised. I saw a tweet from him earlier this week that said, the ex home server guys or something like that. And so when I mentioned that, he was pretty surprised. Good to have him on. If you missed 420, you might want to go back and get that. It's a long one, but you might want to spend some time doing that as well. Mike, I wanted to have you back on. We were talking a little bit about this in the pre-show, that I have known you now at least a decade, maybe more, I think. You and I did some work together. I'm pretty sure we met through Home Server Show.
We did, yep.
And then started thinking of doing some podcasts on our own. I started Home Tech in that day. You, not too long after, started JPEG to RAW.
I did, yeah.
And at one point, I even tried to entice you to come over to the Average Guy TV network. You're like, nah, I think I'm going to do my own thing. Actually, I'm really kind of glad you did your own thing, just to be 100% honest. That was what was best for you. Back in the spring, we kind of followed you through. You'd had a what would you call it on the back here? A tumor?
So it was 6.5 years ago. I think it was
Father's Day. Been that long?
Father's Day weekend. When is that? In June?
Yeah.
6 years ago, I was diagnosed with what they call, it's extremely rare, but it's a blue nevi-like melanoma. And to give you an idea of how rare it was or is, when I went to Emory Hospital, and if you're from the Southeast, you know Emory. If you're not from the Southeast, Emory is one of the premier hospitals here in the Southeast. It's our John Hopkins per se. But I went there to have it removed, surgically removed, and the doctor there told me there's only been about, I think, 102 reported cases of this cancer in the history of recorded medical whatever. And he said, so there's not a lot of data on this. Emory has never seen a case before, but he said, I am 100% confident I can cut it all out of you. Because at that point, it was just on my head. They did lymph nodes, removed them from my neck and from my shoulder. One of the things they do is they take a shot all around the spot. And the spot was pretty big. I forget the exact size, but it was measured in centimeters rather than millimeters, to give you an idea. And usually
pretty large.
Yeah, usually with tumors, they measure them in millimeters.
Maybe like the size of the bottom of this can?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I think it was like 4 centimeters by 5 centimeters, something like that. I don't know what the
put that into Google and people can figure it out. Yeah.
But they take a shot of some kind of radioactive dye, and imagine, what are those bees when you're cutting the grass that come out of the ground and bite the crap out of you?
Like a wasp or like a hornet? Or
yeah, hornet.
Imagine
8 shot, at least the first 8 of them being like a hornet thing. So boom, 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 and eventually it numbs and do that. Yeah. That was to see where this, if this was going to spread, where would it go?
Yeah. And so it was a form of melanoma, right?
Yeah. Okay. So they cut it all out. I think the surgery was 6.5 hours, and surgery was a complete success as far as we knew. And there was no follow-up treatment other than going to the dermatologist every 6 months. And I've been doing that for 6+ years, going to the dermatologist every 6 months. So, from that standpoint, it was completely successful.
Take a drink.
Then, do you want me to continue with the story?
Yeah. Okay. No, this is good. Good. Not everybody knows this, and you're a big part of the community, so keep going. This is good.
Yeah. So, if you're part of my JPEG to RAW family, you've been with us for a while, you know that, because when I first came back from surgery, I was wearing a cap because it had no hair. And
well, we had you on the show maybe once or twice with the cap on, and sure we checked in with you.
So part of my company's policy, all the officers of the company have to get an annual physical. So I went in May and got my physical, and I keep all my blood test results in a Google Doc spreadsheet. So every time I go, I got all those crazy little things they give you in your blood test that you don't really know what it is. I keep all those. And the guy who does the physical said, hey, your alkaline phosphates look a little high. You probably should talk to your regular doctor about what's causing that. So I went back and looked at my spreadsheet, and he was right. I had been running in the 60s to 70s, and the range, as far as the people who do my blood test, if you go to a different lab, it may be a little different. And I should preface this entire conversation with, I'm not a medical expert. If I say anything wrong, I'm an accountant, not a medical expert. So,
and we're not dispensing medical advice or any of those kinds of things. Yeah.
So I looked at the chart, and sure enough, I'm in the 60s to 80s for the last 10 years or whatever. And this was 147. So I was like, that is odd. So I had to go get a regular doctor because I don't have one. And he went and tested me a month later, and I was at 175. So he then sent me to a blood specialist that was at Georgia Cancer Center. So that was the first alarming thing. Why am I going to a blood specialist at a cancer center? Just send me to a blood specialist.
Right.
And go in there, and she does some tests, and we're waiting for those tests. And I then have some episode where my side just started killing me on Friday night. So I'll just sleep it off. And by Sunday, it was worse. So I went into the hospital, and that's when they did a scan and found out, dude, you got spots everywhere. And then we did a biopsy on the liver and found that it was melanoma. So whatever happened here had slowly somehow gotten to the bloodstream, and over the years had found its home on my liver, and then decided to expand from there. So ultimately, I have it on the liver, some ribs, my left leg, the upper left leg, my left shoulder, and my lower, I think it's L1 on my lower back, and maybe a few other spots. So, and my alkaline phosphates continue to rise. And so if you ever get elevated alkaline phosphate number, it could be caused from a number of things. It could be caused from liver issues. It could be caused from bone issues. I think in my case, it was both. But let's say you have arthritis. You may naturally have a high number. Or if you break a bone or something like that happens, you could have a naturally high number that is not an issue, that will go away, or is part of your, your overall, arthritis or whatever. Mine was abnormal because I had not had it before, and it was getting worse and worse. So anyway, we did a PET scan and MRI, did a head to toe PET scan and MRI to make sure it wasn't in the brain.
How much fun was that? Those
the MRI
MRIs,
is awful.
They're terrible.
Yeah, I've never had one before.
How long was your MRI? A couple hours?
No, it seemed like it was shorter than that.
Yeah. Did they give you earbuds and allow you to kind of choose the whatever radio station or whatever you want to listen to?
They didn't put a radio in. No, they
really.
They just gave me the ear stuff to try and block that. But it was like,
oh,
the whole time I'm laying there, I was like, what idiot thought of this as to hit me with sound, make this thing quiet. What is happening here? So I asked, because the earplugs didn't seem to be, I'm sure they were doing a lot, but they didn't seem to be doing enough. Oh yeah,
it's loud in there. Yeah. It is super loud. Well, the gal that did my MRI was, she piped in music and actually asked me, hey, do you want some country or 80s? Or, I mean, she was kind of like a DJ. And then I'm sure it was same with you. They use those earbuds to tell you, okay, next one's coming up. And then, this one's going to last 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And I have some apnea problems too. I got so relaxed. I actually practiced some meditation techniques while I was going through, just to keep myself kind of calm. They put a band over so I couldn't see anything, because that thing is right there. And I'm super claustrophobic.
I just had to close my eyes.
Oh my God. So, but it was really great that she kept okay, 2 minutes, you're doing great. We'll be back in here, and you'll be fine. You're coming out or whatever. But they piped in music. So you didn't get any music, huh?
I didn't get any music. No, you're right. They were able to talk to me through it, but there was no music. And
oh, that's too bad.
That was awful. Now, I tell you, the PET scan is fine. The tube is a little bit bigger, where you're not right there.
Yeah.
But I generally close my eyes on that one too. They do, as part of the PET scan, they do hook up an IV and give you radioactive sugar. As part of that, which is, whatever, you don't really feel it.
I think it helps enhance the image.
It does. The half-life was 112 minutes. So they let it spread throughout your body, then they do the scan, and, within no time.
How fast that stuff can get through you. When you think about how fast your circulatory system works to get, they put it in within half an hour.
Yeah.
Spread out throughout your body.
Yeah. That is crazy.
That's crazy.
So the treatment that, if so, this is what this is melanoma. It's stage 4 melanoma, and with any stage 4 cancer, it's a serious thing.
Very serious.
Yeah, very serious. Because that stage 4 basically means it's spread from its original location, which is a serious thing. So you've probably heard about these things. One of the things that is advancing in cancer treatment is something called immunotherapy. And that is what I'm receiving, the immunotherapy. And it's 2 drugs. The first 4 treatments are 2 drugs. It's Opdivo and Yervoy. One of them helps your system find the cancer. The other one helps your system attack the cancer. So think about what's going on in your body right now, Jim, is you got little warrior T cells going all around your body. And if it finds anything it doesn't like, bam, it attacks it. And that's your immune system is killing everything it can. Sometimes it needs a little help. Sometimes it does all this on its own. Unfortunately, with a lot of cancers is when your T cell comes up to it, the cancer goes, no, I'm good. I'm a good cell. Leave me alone. And then your T cell moves on and goes somewhere else. With immunotherapy, at least the one I'm receiving, it ignores those things. It says, I don't care what you say. I'm killing you. The downside is it may say that to your lungs, to your eyes, to your liver, to anything else. Anything could say I'm good, and this is going to say I don't care. So in a lot of cases, immunotherapy has less side effects than chemotherapy, but it could have many of the same ones. And some, just like with chemotherapy, many of them could be life-threatening. You could go blind. You can develop type 1 diabetes. You could, have trouble breathing because it attacks your lungs. But those are fortunately more rare. The more common side effects are fatigue. And we'll come back to fatigue in just a second. Fatigue, flu-like symptoms, stomach issues, just a general not feeling well, and a few others. The fatigue is something I wasn't prepared for. I don't know if you remember a video I did, Jim, last June. So June 2018, where I put out 3 pallets of sod on my own. I had no idea how much 3 pallets of sod was till it was dropped in my driveway.
Yeah.
And I said, what the heck have I got myself into? I only have 1 day off from work. I got to go to work tomorrow. And I worked all day to 8 o'clock at night putting that sod out. And it was one of the hardest things I did. And at the end of the night, I was wiped out.
Yeah.
And every muscle in my body was sore. I go to bed. I wake up the next day. I'm ready to go. I could go, other than being physically sore, I can go to work. I can go for a walk. I can cut the grass, anything I wanted to do. If I took some Advil, I could, get rid of some of the soreness, but I was good to go. With this fatigue, it is something I've never experienced before. I went to Lowe's to get 2 things: birdseed and a filter for my my refrigerator, water filter from a refrigerator. And go right in. I know right what these things are. I'm in Lowe's, maybe 10 minutes, including the checkout and everything else. I get home. I need a 2-hour nap. I am wiped out. It's insane.
Well, your body's going through just a ton, right? I mean, you're battling the drugs, you're battling the cancer, in your case also, you've lost, for anybody listening to the audio, you have lost a ton of weight, which has had some good, I think probably some good health consequences on some other things, but that's still a lot for the body to take.
Yeah, my diabetes doctor thinks I'm the best patient he's ever had. It's like, you are so good at sticking to because I haven't told him, you are so good at sticking to your diet. I've never seen anybody do this good. And I said, I know, Doc.
I'm doing well. And cholesterol is probably down.
Cholesterol is great,
right? Your blood pressure is good. So you're showing some good health signs there. I think, you're dealing with fatigue. Tech-wise, you kind of had to put your show on hold, right? I mean, JPEG to Raw, cancel, hold. What are you doing there?
Well, what does the future hold? I don't know. The problem right now is, and even tonight, I don't know what day to day how I'm going to feel, and even intraday. So I can start the morning off feeling well, and then by the afternoon just feeling awful. I can feel awful one day, and then the next day not feel as bad. So, yesterday I felt just awful. Couldn't even make it to work. So I haven't gone to work I think yesterday was the second day I've missed. That wasn't a treatment day. I do miss treatment days because those are
long day. How long does it take for a treatment? They're pumping these drugs right into your body.
Yeah.
Is that what
so
they're doing?
When I was receiving the 2 drugs, which was every 3 weeks, that was 30 minutes for the first drug, a 30-minute holding period to make sure I didn't react to it, and then a 90-minute for the second one. Now, that sounds like, okay, that's not that long.
And it's
but
7 out by 9.
Yeah, but it's not
really.
like you get in and
Yeah,
the clock
right.
starts immediately.
Right.
You know, you got to see the doctor, you got to do this. So I was generally there 4 to 6 hours, and I'm getting there at 9, and I'm generally getting out around 2-ish or something like that. Now with the one drug, and tomorrow I have my second treatment of the one drug. So step back. The 4 treatments of Opdivo and Yervoy, what the plan is after you do those 4 treatments, you then go down to just Opdivo every 2 weeks or every 4 weeks, depending on the dosage they want to give you. And that can go on indefinitely. Right now, the plan is for a year, but you never know. So that the fortunate thing there is that's only a 30-minute dosage. So I'm there maybe 2 hours total. And last time I did go into work, but by the afternoon, I was like, this was a mistake. I shouldn't have come in. So tomorrow, it's a day-by-day decision.
Well,
The reason
you had said to me, you know, I checked in last night, how you're feeling. You're like, well, today's been terrible. Let's check tomorrow. I was fully ready to do a solo podcast tonight. Mike was gone. And so I was fully ready. I had some things kind of set up just in case. So I'm glad you made it, but it was one of those things we were kind of checking throughout the day.
Yeah. Thank you. And that's part of why I've paused, at least. You know, if it's not a permanent thing, it's at least a pause on JPEG to RAW, because I can't guarantee anything. You know, I could tell Tim, my co-host, I'm good to go, and by showtime, I'm not good to go. Go ahead.
Have what kind of listener feedback how has your audience responded to this? Because certainly, I mean, your audience is probably the same size, maybe a little bit larger than mine, and that's significant, right? And then that's pretty passionate. You've been doing this for a while. They know you pretty well. How's that audience responded?
So what I did whenever this came out is I went into our Facebook group and I said, hey, look, here's what's happening. I handed over the group to one of our admins and said, Gina's going to be managing the group indefinitely. And I'm not going to do any more updates in the group because I want the group to be photography. And I'm not going to be doing but just one update through the podcast itself. But if you want to keep up with me and what's going on, follow me and, you know, friend me or follow me on Facebook, and I'll do it on my personal page.
Good call.
So yeah, I do that. You know, basically anytime there's news, I'll post something about that, and I do get, you know, some good response. And I get people who, you know, respond to me directly. That maybe they don't want to ask questions openly. I'm pretty open. If you want to ask a question, you know, I'm pretty open to answer any question. But
yeah,
you know,
I've appreciated that about you. I asked you tonight pre-show, hey, is anything off limits? And you're like, no, I'm pretty open to talk about anything. Mike, when you were going through those treatments, any technology that you noticed in that you just kind of went, oh, you know, there's a lot of technology that kind of goes into this? Or did you use, I mean, certainly you're sitting there, I'd go nuts, like just sitting there waiting for that. Anything that you used tech gadget wise to kind of keep you occupied while you were going through the treatments?
So I, you know, obviously bring my phone, and I either will watch videos on YouTube videos while I'm doing it, or sometimes I just want to lay back and relax. You know, you're there for a while, and I'll listen to Pandora or something like that. So that's really the only tech there. You know, the tech from them is pretty rudimentary. You're basically just sticking an IV, right? Yeah, you're sticking an IV and hooking up a bag. They hook, you know, those little machines that they hook it up to, that they, you know, say 30 minutes and it figures out the dosage. That's not really high tech anymore. So there's not a lot going on there. One thing, when you go in as often as I do now, you get to know like the entire team. So I know them by name. I walk in, the receptionist Scott, say, hey Scott, you know, I know another guy who has a Fitbit, and I'll tell him, hey, can you put my Fitbit on while you're walking around so I can get some steps?
That's super great.
Because I'm going to be sitting here for 4 hours. If you could just wear my Fitbit,
I'm going to put this in your pocket and just give it back to me when I'm done. That's super great. You had been, Mike, you'd kind of been losing some weight and getting kind of healthy again when this hit. How did that feel? Like, how'd you feel when it was like, you know, and I kind of asked this question. Let me be honest. Like, we're not going to necessarily talk a lot of tech tonight. I'm kind of talking to the listener at this point. One of my goals is just to catch up with you. You're a super important part of the community, and you've been around for a long time, and you're my friend, and we've met several times in home server show meetups and all those other kinds of things. And so one is just to kind of catch up, but But two is my audience tends to be 35 to 55 white males. It's kind of like us, right? We're in that, we're all in that boat. And I want other men, maybe women too, to kind of hear the story just kind of from you, because I think it's important. We're in this spot where these kinds of things are important. So Mike, how did you feel when you got that news? You had lost a bunch of weight already.
85 pounds on my own. Yeah.
Yeah. By exercising and walking. I was watching you on
Diet,
Facebook.
yeah.
You'd post, hey, I got this 3-mile walk in. You'd gone out. I was super proud of you, by the way.
I love the walking. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was like, wow, you were losing and I was gaining, and I've stopped that since then. But how'd you feel when you got that initial news and you're like, dang it, I was getting healthy? How did that feel?
Very disappointed because, I was getting healthy. I was, walking quite a bit, and I love the walking. We have a great walking trail around here. I love that. I was looking forward because I always had an idea of I need to lose more weight and maybe I'll even start running. I'm not big into running, but I felt like at least at first I knew I was too heavy to run. I would have damaged myself. Yeah. But I was wanting to get into the weight range where I had the option. If I wanted to do some running, I could do some running. And losing that, that option and having this setback was very discouraging. And I would tell you, the first time the weather got nice here, which was 3 weeks ago or so, when it started to feel a little bit like fall, it was just beautiful here. I decided, all right, I am going to go out and I am going to walk just a little bit, maybe a quarter of a mile. Who can't do a quarter of a mile? Walk a quarter of a mile, and that's it. And as soon as I start to feel any kind of weakness, I'm done. I'm going to come back, because our trail is, whatever I walk, I got to walk back. There's no, you can't get a car there. So if I walk a mile, I got to walk a mile back. So you got to keep the walk back. You got to be
really, or go in circles or something. Right?
Yeah. So what happened though was my left leg, which is one of the places I have a spot, started to just absolutely kill me that night. It was a pain where the Advil typically can help me out working. It makes me feel not quite as bad. It makes some of the pain, it takes the edge off the pain, and that's really all I need. But it did nothing. So I took, I do have Percocet. They gave me Percocet, but I tried to stay off of that. I took 2 Percocet, and that helped a little bit. And then 6 hours later, I took 2 more Percocet, and that helped quite a bit. The pain went away while I was on the Percocet. But if you ever taken Percocet, it has side effects of its own. And I didn't know that. So I'm sitting there and I start scratching my nose. I go, what's happening? And then my leg starts itching. And so I'm itching everywhere. I'm hot as can be. I can't have any covers on me. I'm hot. I am wired. I cannot go to sleep at all. And so I finally decided to pick up my phone and look up what are the side effects of Percocet. And it's itchy, it's body heat, and it's, you can either be super drowsy or wired, and all those things. I said, okay, Percocet's not going to work. I can't live like this. Yeah. But the thing was, I guess that was too much walking from a leg right now.
Yeah.
And if you want to know, where's the pain, if I have pain, it would be my left leg, my left shoulder, and my lower back. Most of the time, it's not all 3 at the same time, and most of the time, it's not too bad. The pain has not really been the issue.
You did these 4 treatments, right?
Yep.
And of 2 drugs, and then they checked again. And how are the results from that check?
So immunotherapy does not work for everyone. And in my case, when they do a PET scan, it tells them one thing. It doesn't tell them the size of the tumor. It tells them some kind of activity level. They have a term for it, but how active or how hot the tumor is. And in all but one of my tumors, the activity level came down, which is good, but it did not come down as much as we had hoped. And we had actually hoped that some of the tumors would have gone away. Because I had, the Emory doctor told me only half the people can take all 4 treatments, that half the people have to back out before the 4th treatment.
Wow. So you made that number.
Yeah, I made all 4, and yet it still didn't do as much. Right. So I went back to the Emory. So I look at the Emory doctor as the expert, and I go to him when I need an expert opinion. So I went back to him, and he says, look, here's what we're going to do. We're going to stick with plan A, which is those 4 treatments, and then the single treatment for at least a year until that stops working. So we'll do a scan every 3 months or so. And at some point when the tumors start to grow, we'll say, all right, plan A is not working. We'll move to whatever plan B will be. And that's the figure out down the road.
Is surgery ever in play at this point to remove them, or is it too small, or how does that work?
They've never mentioned that as a possibility. I know when they were doing, yeah,
I'm not a doctor. Just asking.
When they were doing the liver biopsy. So when they do a liver biopsy, one, they deaden you. So I didn't really feel anything, but the person said, so we're going to stick this needle in you, and then we're going to stick this other thing inside the needle to pull out something. But the needles are pretty small. I said, hold on a second. If you're sticking a needle inside of a needle to grab something and pull it out, that can't be small. in my terms of what you're going to jab me with, that's not small.
It is still pretty small.
Yeah. So I didn't look, but they had me hooked up to a CT scan or something so you can see it like virtually. And I told the guy, I said, as long as you're there, just pull all the spots out. And he goes, I wish it was that easy.
I know.
I can't do that.
It is an area I wish we'd get nanotechnology on, and I think in the future, hopefully, if we can hold this planet together, hopefully in the future we would release these nanobots, to go in, and they would be smart enough to find it and confirm it, and then begin to remove it, right? In that kind of way, it's a lot more complicated. I mean, cancer's very, very small. Yeah, in a lot of places, and you got it in a lot, and who knows the ramifications of removing it that way as well. But so they went in and did a liver biopsy.
Yeah, and that's where they found out what it was. Okay. Yeah. Because even with melanoma, they have to determine there's like markers or mutations of the melanoma, and they need to know which mutation it is to determine. Because if it wasn't a certain mutation, then this wouldn't be the treatment they would prescribe. They would prescribe something else.
Is it a pretty common form? I mean, I'm sure you've done all this research. So was what you have pretty common, less common? How does that work?
That I don't know. I know the Emory doctor said that they're going to start some kind of documentation on me, because look, I'm the first one at Emory to have had that blue nevi melanoma. And now, how do you get melanoma inside of you? It's, as far as I know, it had to be on the outside of you at some point. Yeah. So we all think that it came from that thing. And even though we got clear margins and got it out, that it must have gotten to the bloodstream and just taken this long. Yeah. So, I am a patient that made it 6 years from the original one, and now got this. And so they want to start, I'm going to be data point number 1, I guess. Yeah. It doesn't help me.
No. Well, I mean, others may benefit from your experience. When you'd had that removed from your head, from your skull, if they had said to you in a preemptive strike, we're going to put you through these 4 treatments just to make sure we clear the body, would you have said yes to that, you think, from a preemptive strike?
Anything they said. Now, the immunotherapy I'm receiving now wasn't there then.
Yeah. Okay.
So, but they might have said chemo or something like that.
Right.
I would have done whatever they told me to do.
Is the new treatment a response to chemo? In other words, because when you started this, I thought you were going through chemo, and you were like, no, this is not chemotherapy. This is a new kind of treatment. Is this in a response? Because chemo is equally as hard, right? For people. I mean, it's basically we're radiating you to death, right? And trying to kill everything. Is this in response to that?
I think it's because with some cancers, the chemo has not been, chemo in some cases is almost as damaging as the treatment itself. Yeah. So I think that they're trying to find other things. If you could harness your own body to fight these things, that's kind of the holy grail. But what they don't know is why it works in some people and why it doesn't work in the other. And, like with Alex Trebek, who's going through pancreatic cancer, which is probably one of the worst ones you can get.
It's hard. That has almost a 0% recovery. Right. I mean, success rate. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, and I'm not a huge fan or whatever, but I feel for anybody who has it. Unfortunately, within months, we'll probably be hearing about him passing away. Because pancreatic cancer is just so awful. I mean, Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs. He tried to eat carrots to overcome that one. He waited too long. Yeah. Do you think is Alex Trebek still recording Jeopardy at this point?
I don't know. I don't know if he is or not.
Okay.
I know they've got a lot in the bag, where they recorded a lot, in the bag. So
I didn't realize he had pancreatic cancer.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
That's when he came out and said he's in near remission. Yeah. He came out at one point and said he's in near remission. I said, I don't know what near remission is. That's like, I'm almost pregnant. You're either in remission or you're not in remission. Yeah. And it's good to keep your spirits up. Yeah. That's good for him to keep his spirits up, but you got to be careful that you don't give false hope to other people. Yeah. Because if you're suffering from pancreatic cancer, you may have gone back to your doctor and say, "What the heck? Give me what Alex is getting."
Right.
And what Alex is getting is probably what you're getting, and it's not going to work out. The earlier you can detect some of the things, and that's what Alex is talking about now. The earlier you can detect cancer, the more likely you are going to be able to beat it. And that's where a lot of the advances have come in. The advances of treating it once it reaches like my stage, we still haven't made a lot of progress. The advances of finding it early has helped out. In my case, I was still going to the dermatologist, so there was nothing externally.
Yeah.
And this guy does a very thorough review of my skin. And he doesn't wear gloves. And when I get done, I got to go home and take a shower because I smell like him then. But he does a very thorough job. And I would tell you that the Thursday before I found out about this was the last time I saw him. And he goes, "You're doing so great. We're going to move to once a year. I don't need to see you, but once a year."
But it was the blood work right? It was the blood work
Right.
that showed things were
Yeah.
up. So there really wasn't much way to catch that any earlier, right? I mean, the markers they were watching for were in your blood work.
Yeah.
If you'd had blood work every 6 months, maybe they would have caught it 6 months sooner, right? But
Yeah.
the spreadsheet, by the way, I love that idea. I may start doing that myself, of grabbing those numbers and putting them in a spreadsheet, because I do probably what you did, which is like, yeah, okay, good enough. Or I just wait for the doctor to call me. Do I need to do something different, And so good for you there. But it may not, early catching of this may not have been possible. I don't know.
So I had a blood test from the diabetes doctor in February.
Yeah.
So from February, I had a fairly normal alkaline phosphate. And then in May, when I had the physical,
that's when it was elevated.
So I'd gone from like 80 something, low 80s to 147 in that period of time.
Something must have triggered it, right? Or it reached a critical mass or something, right?
Because, physically, I didn't feel any different. I did not feel anything physically.
Yeah.
So I would tell you from a tech perspective. So where I go from here, one of the things that's got me concerned. So let's, not to be morbid, but let's go down a scenario where this eventually gets me.
Yeah. Well, we're all terminal, by the way. We're all terminal in some, just when, right?
Yeah. I have a fairly, for my family at least, a fairly complex network here. With do they care about my Unraid server? No. Is it overly complex where they're not going to be able to use it? Yeah, they're probably not going to be able to use it. My PFSense router, I can train my son with it so that he can at least get it going back. But if like the hard drive crashes or the PC crashes, he's not going to know what to do. Right. And then the internet's down forever. So one of the things I've done, I've been working at Waffle House for 30 years. And one of the things I've done for them as I make this booklet for them is I've tasked different experts at work and say, "Hey, will you do this in this case?" So I know many of our IT guys there. It's like, "Hey, Matt, will you, if anything happens, will you help my family out with these IT questions? Hey, Marianne, will you help out with tax questions? Hey, so-and-so, will you help out legal questions?" And so I'm building that database or that table for them that I'm going to have printed out on a USB stick that they can refer to if they need that. Now, we all hope that we won't get to that. But one of the things that having time does is you can start to prepare. Yeah. Now, I'll tell you another thing. Some people have asked, because with cancer, you can go through depression and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I have never been depressed about the future. I've never been depressed about, what does tomorrow bring? The only time I get some depression is when I'm laying in bed on a Saturday at 2 p.m. It is beautiful outside. Mm-hmm. And I am feeling like crap. And I go through spurts of where I'm just freezing cold. And I try not to take medicine when I'm at home because I'm trying to, keep off Advil as much as I can, that kind of stuff. So I'll just let it run its course. But I may be freezing cold under 3 blankets for 5 hours. And I'm laying there in bed looking outside at the beautifulness outside, knowing I'm going to get 0 done this weekend, nothing around the house, nothing on the podcast. And that does get to you mentally sometimes. The future, it'll be what it's going to be. I don't get too concerned about that. But the feeling bad, the fatigue, and knowing, I've resigned myself to what I can and can't do. And I got to live within those parameters, at least for now.
What are you doing about passwords?
Passwords.
for those kinds. Yeah.
So I'm putting those into onto the USB stick, and I'm putting them, and I'm also printing them out so they'll have those.
Okay.
So yeah, and then all the major sites that we go to.
Yeah.
Some of them require two-factor authentication, so I got to give them that information too.
Right. Yeah. Off your phone or something, right? I mean, it really is like we kind of created a pretty complex, and the folks that have passed in my family and my wife's family have all been fairly elderly who didn't use technology.
Yeah.
So there wasn't, we're Mike, you and I mean, we grew up in the 80s and we were the first, sorry, millennials.
Yeah.
We were the first on all this technology. So we've really embedded it in all of our stuff. I've used, I'm beginning to use the LastPass feature where I'm on premium.
Mhm.
So I can have an account where my wife can get access. Could she do that today? It's probably not set up right. Like that's one of those kinds of things like, okay, I need to kind of practice this and go through it and make sure that's going to be my plan. I've said this on the show before. I have back on the shelf, Sarah hates it when I call this, but it's like a little death book that like has all our insurance policies in it. So if something were to happen to me, hey, everything we have from a life insurance perspective is here, or with the kids or whatever, right, is here. To be able to do that. That's how I've kind of I've done that. You probably have a different financial strategy. Are you fairly confident she could get access to whatever you need to do financially so that would continue to go on? Because I'm sure it's fairly technical.
Well, with the passwords I've got for her, yeah, she could get in there. One of the things with investments is, my form of investing. So I have, stock at Waffles. There's nothing she can do with that. If I were to pass away, they'd eventually pay that out.
Right.
She wouldn't maybe know what to do with all that money. But the other money we have invested in stocks and stuff like that. Yeah. The problem with that is, let's say I own to AT&T because it's got a great dividend. 5 years from now, you may not want to own that stock.
Yeah, right.
So no matter what I think about an investment today,
right,
5 years from now, 10 years from now, that may totally change. And so that's one of the, trusting someone with money is very difficult, because I can trust this person to give my wife, my family tax advice. I can trust this person to give legal advice. I know these people, I've been knowing these people for 20 years. I know these people can do that. But to tell anybody, hey, can you help my wife manage the money? That's really tough. Who do you trust with money?
Yeah. No, right on. And you've kind of always been a guy who you were a self-made guy, and you did a lot of things yourself. Like it goes back to the very beginning, of the show when I said, I invited you. I really wanted you to be a part of the Average Guy Network. I thought it would be a great match. We were good friends. I was like, yeah, come and join the network. And in those days, you're like, nope, well, you thought about it. You were super kind. You were like, I thought about it, but no, I think I'm going to do my own thing. And I was a little disappointed for a second. I also said, I'm really glad you did that. I know you're very particular about the way you like things. And I wouldn't have wanted to be that one to have to answer those questions. So you made the right call. But yeah, I think that is difficult as we think about the future, whether that's a week from now or 10 years from now or 30 years from now. Those are always concerns in there.
Yeah.
Of kind of thinking through what do we do with kind of the stuff we had. Have you simplified anything at all as you think about, like, I just need to make my life a little less complicated? Have you bought any new services or any new technology services? You kind of mentioned your router. I switched to a Bitdefender box just because it's drop dead simple. I'm not in that. I'm not in that, but it keeps me from, like, PF Sense is like, I'm super busy at work and I don't know if I want to troubleshoot this thing. Have you simplified anything technology?
Unfortunately, I have not. If anything, now we have Ring cameras everywhere. My wife knows how to use those. I've bought even more technology over the years. So, you like the Unraid server, they can just turn that off. The only thing for me, what it does is all the PCs back up to it. I have files on there that I use quite often. For them, they could care less. They'll care whenever their hard drive crashed and they don't know how to get it recovered. But
well, in some regards, maybe a state, it would get stuck in an estate sale or something like that, right? Because it doesn't, it doesn't mean anything to them. John says in chat, I have a thing called an ice binder, ICE, in case of emergency. That's good. The bad thing is we haven't filled it out yet, which is one of those things like, you're like, hey, those plans are great, but you do need to put something in them. And then Andrew says, John, my boss has an envelope to open the event. I get hit by a bus. I should probably update its contents. I think in it's situations like this, 2 years ago when I was diagnosed with some prostate issues, and at one point they thought it was cancerous as well. Prostate cancer is pretty easy to beat. It's not melanoma, right? If it gets out, it's deadly, right. but contained to the prostate, it's pretty treatable. And I had some real thoughts about, okay, like I better get some things in order. And I think that is a good, that is one of those things. And I don't think, Mike, and you're pretty reasonable, so I'll run this by you. I don't think it has to be a morbid thing, right? And I don't think it has to be a sad, depressing item where you kind of mope through it and but I think it's a reality. I mentioned we're all 100% terminal. Like at some point, this is going to happen. Has that caused you to be more reflective on some of those things that of the future that may be shorter than you thought they might be?
In some ways, yeah.
That's a hard. If that's too hard of a question, you can totally blow that off.
No, it's not too hard. I'm just trying to think. Because when I first got the thing on my head, and then when I got this, I thought maybe I'll become a better photographer because I'm more in tune with my emotions, and that has never materialized. I'm still the same crappy photographer I was before.
Oh, you're pretty good. You're pretty good.
But no, I guess it friendships has made me, reflect on that friendship more. It's made me also think, at work, there's some things I want to get done. If I look over my 30-year career at Waffle House, there's lots of things that I've done that I'm proud of. Many of those have kind of become the norm. Like, over a 30-year career, there's not too many people who I work with today that I worked with 30 years ago. Mm-hmm. Like my entire accounting staff, none of them were there. A lot of them have only been hired in the last 5 years. So a lot of the things that I developed over that time frame, they know no different. Mm-hmm. They don't know that, this is this way because Mike developed it. That's just the way it is. So there's a lot of things that I've done that I feel proud of that you can't say is a Mike legacy because everybody just thinks it's the way it is. But one thing I am proud of that's recent, and that I was very nervous that if anything happened to me, this would just die, but has turned the curve and now has really got some legs to it. And I know that even if something happens to me, it will march on. And it'll be my legacy there. I started probably 3 years ago, a BI group, a business intelligence group, an analytics group. Mm-hmm. And at first, when I say I started a group, it was me working nights and weekends. We bought a program called ClickSense from the people called Click. And your top 3 data analytics programs is Power BI from Microsoft, mm-hmm. Tableau, which is now from Salesforce, mm-hmm. and Click. And we like Click the best. And so for about a year and a half, it was just me doing it at home, trying to convince people this is something we need to be doing, and making no headway until I got a couple other people. One, I drafted one of my accountants. I told him, you're doing this now. and then a couple guys in finance who saw, hey, this might be good. And it's really grown to where, like, tomorrow we have it every Friday, 2 to 4. We have a session on analytics. Tomorrow we'll have a full packed room where you got to bring in extra chairs for people who want to learn it and become better at it. So I know that it now has legs to where it will continue no matter what. And even more importantly, the higher ups now see the value in it.
Mm-hmm. No, that's great. It does, I think, bring, whether, like I said, whether it's a year or 10 years or 30 years, you don't know. Like you don't know what's ahead. That's, there are some things, I think, at least for me, it got me thinking of a little bit shorter term of like, okay, well, what if I do have just 2 years left on the planet? Or what if I've got 5 years left? How am I, what's going to be different? And I kind of responded a little bit like you did, which was like, well, there's things I can do about it, but it's going to take its course.
Yeah.
And, I've appreciated, I've wanted to have you back on just to talk this through, because I think it's really, really important. One, wanted to see again. Like it was like, okay, we haven't had a chance to connect. Just I want to see how you're doing. But I don't know, you don't know. Like when you talk about friends, you're like, how many more times am I going to get Mike Howard back on this podcast? It could be 1, it could be 10. We may be laughing about this, a decade from now, and
that would be awesome.
That was anything. So what do you tell? So, what do you tell people now? Any advice that you would give? Just anything, any lessons learned or advice that you give as you've gone through this? Have you pulled any of those kind of nuggets out where you're like, people need to know this? Any of that? If you don't have one, that's fine. But want to give you a chance.
I was, like I said before, the earlier you can find some of these things, the better. So if you have somebody, I think it's John earlier was saying something like he wouldn't know if his numbers were out of whack, or you can still be in the normal and see it rise. And I think it's important to track your numbers. And if you do see something coming out of whack, talk to your doctor about it. Because mine's melanoma, some specific things, going to a dermatologist is one of the easiest doctor appointments you can go to. Even if they find something on you, they can, generally it's going to be small. They can cut it out. They can freeze it off, whatever else. It's not that bad. And most of the time they're not going to find anything. So you go once or twice a year and you get that covered. Had I done that from the beginning, maybe this would have been smaller and this wouldn't have happened. But if you guys are terrible at going to the doctor. I am too. I don't want to go. But if something odd is happening, get it checked out. And it could be something that you need to deal with, but it's sooner you get it dealt with, the better. Talking about retirement, I think that's what you're hitting on a minute ago. Talking about retirement.
Mm-hmm.
So early in my career at Waffle House, there was the guy who was over IT. He was one of those guys. I liked him. He was a great guy. But he had already got as much money as he wanted to retire. But he was, what a lot of people do is just one more year, because you got one more year of money, just one more year. He went out to play, he was in great shape, went out to play racquetball during lunch, had a massive heart attack at lunch and died. So he never got to retire. So I never wanted to be that guy. For me, financially, I'm probably 2 years away from being able to retire. Now, if I pass away, life insurance my wife would get, I'm probably there now. But if not, so if I can stay healthy, I'd like to work another 2 more years. But if things deteriorate, I would probably stop sooner. We'll go with that. Somebody asked if I shoot black and white for photography. I do sometimes.
You were saying more reflect. You were saying you were getting more reflective. You know how black and white is kind of reflective. So
okay,
yeah.
I don't know if that was around what you said.
No, it was around. You were saying I don't know if I've gotten more reflective. Some people when this happens they get more reflective, and I think Andrew was kind of when photographers are getting reflective, they start shooting in black and white. Do you think have you made or you're feeling like you're making any short-term gadget purchases because you're like, screw it, I'm just like, I don't know, so I'm just going to buy the most expensive iPhone? But no, sorry, that wouldn't have been you, but
that would not have been me.
Sorry, Freudian slip. The most expensive Android, whatever. Have you had that temptation? Because listen, I did. Like when I thought maybe I had prostate cancer, there was a couple times in there where I was like, well, screw it. Like, I don't know how long I'm going to be. I'm going to treat myself. Damn it. I'm going to like, have you struggled with that at all? No,
I almost the opposite is I almost don't feel like spending money on me.
Yeah.
We did buy a Roomba the last time that Amazon had one of those sales or whatever, and we got a good deal on Roomba. So it's time I'm getting my my cancer treatment, and I'll sit there and I'll tell the lady, hold on a second, I need to vacuum the house, and I'll push the button, and I go, man, this is hard work, but somebody's got to do it.
That's so great.
Yeah, it is great. It is great. Yeah. That Roomba works pretty good.
Yeah.
So outside of that, no, I've been more of a not spending money on me.
Yeah.
One of the things I did is I accelerated paying the house. And we've now paid the house off, so my wife wouldn't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
So I poured a lot of our extra money into getting that done.
I think that's a good call. John says thanks, Mike, for sharing this. Joe says super great content, guys. And one of the things and Joe says guilty of not seeing the doctor often enough. That's what he was saying. One of the things I've appreciated, and one of the things I was going to do tonight, if you couldn't make it, was kind of an appreciation show a little bit, just kind of tell listeners how much I appreciate them. But one of those things I've appreciated about the listeners for Home Gadget Geeks is it doesn't have to be tech 100% of the time, and that the community matters more than anything. We spent a little time on Twitter this week. Tony's been really good about reminiscing. He's been throwing up pictures, right? I think you were you in
Yeah, I
one
was
of
in one of
those?
those pictures. Man, I was heavy back then.
Yeah.
Holy moly.
Yeah. Well, and how much total have you lost since then?
130 pounds.
That's great. I mean,
Yeah.
good for you. I mean, it hasn't been easy, by the way.
No, all of it's been easy.
None of that's been easy. Half of that probably through diet and exercise. The other half as you've been working through the situation.
Mm-hmm.
But I've always appreciated the fact that the audience here is sophisticated enough that they're like, I can do a week like this, and they're like, whoa, this isn't tech. I'm getting terrible YouTube comments and some of those kinds of things. So if you're listening to this right now, thanks for getting to the end, and thanks for kind of being a faithful 421. Maybe you haven't listened to all of them. It'd be interesting to know how many did. How many episodes do you have at JPEG to Raw, Mike?
I think we stopped somewhere around 234.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
you kind of wonder, has anybody listened to all 234?
Yeah.
I'm sure there has, right? I'm sure you got some. Maybe you're listening right now. You've listened to all of those. But I appreciate that. They've given me great freedom to do that as a community. We've spent a lot of time, I'm thinking of Tim and John and all the Johns that have been there, Kevin, Tony, I think, about Joe and the chat room, Andrew, who's been around for a long time, Ken, who was in here a little bit earlier. He's driving home now. I'm sure I left the name out, but Mike, I think for me, in thinking about you and why it was so important to have you on the show, is because this is bigger than technology and phones and gadgets and even unrated servers. I know that you find that hard to believe, but it's even bigger.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. It's bigger than that. Yes.
Yeah. Well, for me, I mean, the show is bigger than that.
Okay.
The show is bigger than that in the sense that we have a great community.
Mm-hmm.
And so Mike, I appreciate you taking the hour to hang out with me. How you feeling? You didn't say when we started, when we were talking before pre-show, you said it's never better or good. It's just degrees of bad.
Yeah.
So has it gotten any worse since you've been on the show, or how are you feeling?
When we're done, I'm going to bed.
Okay.
The chills haven't come back, so that's always good. And as long as I'm sitting here not moving too much, I'm not feeling the pain in the leg. But I can definitely tell that I'm, I wear down. But it's a good conversation to have. Hopefully no one listening to this ever has to deal with something like this. But I would say that if you listen to this afterwards and you have questions for me, maybe you are going through something yourself or a loved one is. Feel free to reach out to me at podcast@jpegraw.com. I don't check every day anymore, but I will, when I check, I'll try and respond to you. I don't mind any questions. If you ask me money questions, I might not answer that. I can give you some ballpark stuff on how much some of this stuff costs. It's insanely expensive, but hopefully you have good insurance. And I would say that check your insurance. Make sure you have good insurance because cancer can hit you at any age. If you're in your 20s and you think I'm unstoppable, unfortunately, it can hit you there. It can hit you as you get older. I think it's like 30+% of people eventually get some form of cancer, and the treatments are insanely expensive.
They are. You need to be ready. Sarah took out a separate policy just on me, for that, and we don't have any cancer in the family, but you never know, right? There's a little prostate scare with me. Andrew says tech can be a time sink. I should spend less time with computers and more time with my family. And I think that's a good, thing to take away, right? I think that it recentered when I went through this time, and I'm not out of the woods, by the way, but when I went through this time, it kind of recentered me and reset some priorities. I'm sure, Mike, it did for you in a few things, right? You're probably spending as much time as you can with family and kids and some of those kinds of things when that time is available. You're choosing that over watching TV or whatever, right? So good. Well, hang tight for 1 second. Just a couple reminders. One, if you want to join us in the Facebook group, facebook.com/theaverageguy.tv/Facebook. Discord is the same way, theaverageguy.tv/Discord. If you want to send me an email, Jim@theaverageguy.tv. We'll get you there as well. If this is the first time you listen to the show, well, thanks for making it all the way to the end. I appreciate it. It was riveting enough. We don't do this every week, and sometimes I wish we did, because sometimes the tech can be kind of boring. We have some great guests on here that do that as well. But If you've made it all the way to the end, thanks for doing that. The Average Guy.tv platform hosted by Maple Grove Partners. Get secure, reliable, high-speed hosting from people that you know and you trust. Of course, you know Christian, if you've been listening to Cyber Frontiers. He and I have both been insanely busy and not able to get to a show, but we will, Cyber Frontiers. Thank you for doing that. Check out those plans. Hosting plans start as little as $10. MapleGrovePartners.com. Don't forget to download the app. HomeGadgetGeeks.com. We appreciate you doing that as well, Mike. Thanks again for doing that.
Yeah, thanks
We'll
for
be
having
back.
me.
You bet. It's great having you. And we'll be back next Thursday, 8 p.m. Central, 9 Eastern. We'll get an update from Wieger. And he and Wieger and I. And then we got a whole host of things coming up. Rich Hay is coming back. I got Life Door coming on. I guess get that one done. Aaron Lawrence is coming back. We've got just a whole bunch of great shows between now and Christmas. So you want to tune in if you haven't done that. With that, we'll say goodnight.
Good night.